all know Macy Gray caused a storm of controversy after stopping by Piers Morgan Uncensored this week, where she would share her opinions on transgender identity. During the interview, Gray said that she doesn't think gender reassigning surgery makes you a woman. After hearing her comments, social media was outraged and even labeled Gray as transphobic for what she had to say. Comedian Flame Monroe would come to Instagram to defend Gray, agreeing with her stance in the process. Flame said, "Gender is a fact, identity is how you feel, and sexuality is what you desire." Now, on the other hand, T.S. Madison would address Gray's comments on her social media live to say that Gray used the wrong choice of words. T.S. Madison would say Gray should have said female instead of woman. Today we have our comedy hype analysts, Yamanika Saunders and Pierre calling to the show to give their reactions. But first, let's take a look at what Flame Monroe had to say.
Macy Gray, I want to tell you out the words of my mouth from my portion of the LGBTQIA+ community that I wholeheartedly support you and thank you for seeing the real world for what it is. I do not believe that you are transphobic or homophobic or any other kind of phobic, because here are the three things. Gender is a fact, identity is how you feel, and sexuality is your desire. Because until you have the heart and mind of a woman, I don't believe that you could ever possibly be a biological woman. Trans women are trans women. Trans men are trans men. Women are women and men are men. It is as simple as that.
Now, Yamanika, I want to come to you. As Pierre mentioned, we talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday, but I want to get your thoughts and reaction. What's your reaction to, Flame Monroe responding to Macy, and then also when you first saw the clip of Macy Gray?
Listen, there was a time when people was trying to figure out what was going on with Macy Gray, right? Nobody knew whether she was a nigga or a bitch. So,
damn.
No, but that's the truth. Sometimes, you know how, especially Black men, as soon as they don't, with a woman that don't look traditional to them, they ready to call her a man. So, I try to step out of these type of categories because, when somebody has identity, right, what they feel that they are, who are we to question? If you want to transition from being a man to a woman, God bless you for that. I think really where we start to have issues is when we have things like, now you have, trans women, what category do they go into when we talk about sports and athleticism, right? When the structure of men and women are different, and some of these trans women, there's not a lot, sometimes you can't subtract the power that they still possess from their, masculine skeletons or whatever have you. So we have a lot of, problems with that, with women complaining about competing against who they consider to be men, even though these men have transitioned into being women and want to identify as trans women. So I think it's very important that we do keep, I don't know what's wrong with it, saying that you are a trans woman instead of, some women feeling like trans women are co-opting their spaces and there's sort of a disadvantage to being a natural born woman in things like athleticism and things of that nature.
So let me ask you just to make sure I have a clear understanding. Do you agree or disagree with what Macy had to say? Because I think a lot of people, and I think you make it very clear, with your stance and where you are, but a lot of people, did smack that label of calling her transphobic for making her statement. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Here's the thing. When something applies to you, right? When this is something that affects your life and you take stake in it, I can understand people saying that there's some transphobia around that. If you're a trans person, I can understand that. At the same time, I don't believe every commentary on trans people comes from a place of transphobia. I think it wasn't that she was saying that she doesn't like trans people. I think she was saying, when, as a woman, to then have a person who has transitioned into being a woman, let's still have a space for women who were born women, and then also we can have a space for women who have transitioned into being women. And I think that when you talk about the trans community, some trans people don't want to have that identifier anymore. They want to be labeled as women across the board. And I think, that's where the conversation of female versus woman and these different terms for women come into play.
Yeah, now speaking of, that difference between female and woman, T.S. Madison did speak up as well, and that was one of the things that she said. She felt like Macy Gray should have said female instead of woman. So I want to take a look at that clip and then come back and get your reaction. So let's take a look at that clip.
But see, let me tell you something. The correct way to have said that is, correct way to say that is, it doesn't make you a female. The correct term would have been, just because you get titties don't make you a female. Because female and woman, they fall under the same, but female is genetic. Woman is a part of social construct. That's why I'm at with it. I don't give a fuck about none of you hoes that feel that kind of way no more, because bitch, the same way you feel about me, somebody feel about your motherfucking ass. When you be out there complaining about this going on for this and that and other, bitch, you voted for some shit against me. Yeah. Black women, trans women, black men, all of us is in a targeted group, bitch. Until you get that shit in your head that we all in motherfucking danger, bitch, live with the consequences, pussy.
Now, Pierre, I know when we talked about this yesterday, T.S. Madison was someone that, you said is a friend and someone that you brought into the conversation. So I want to get your reactions to it, but also have you talked to T.S. Madison since, the Macy Gray comments first came out?
Yeah, I text her just on some GP on some other stuff. And, I guess you've seen the show. I think it's the semantics of the words of a female and a woman. And I think I correlated with a house and a home. They're both, a house is a house and a home is a house too, but it's what you make it into at the end of the day. So I understand what she's saying. I believe at the end of the day, the house is a female. If you're a woman, that's a home. It's how you change it. It's, at the end of the day, a house is a house. So a female is a female by God, how you become a female, how you're born that way. Now, if you want to consider yourself a woman, I think the semantics of those words are what's the problem. Some people don't want to even give credit to somebody who said, I feel like a woman. I changed myself into be a woman. True, but you're not a female. And I think that's what she was saying, that, but at the end of the day, you're not a female. Because me and her have had a discussion, me and my girl, T.S. Madison. We've told her, and I talked about sports and stuff like that. And I said, the advantage of you are stronger than most, females. So it would be wrong for you. And she agreed with that. So I think it's more semantics of the word female and woman. And some people want to say, no, it's female, woman across the board. I don't give a damn. Some people say, hey, those transgenders say, hey, no, I could be a woman. I know I'm not a female biologically, but I am a woman at the end of the day. And if like having a house and a home, you have a house or it's a home, both of them ain't always the same. Every house ain't a home.
Yamanika, I'll come to you next. What's your reaction to T.S. Madison, responding back to Macy Gray?
I'm still trying to get the house is not a home, even when there's no one with a dick there.
That might be true.
But a penis is still a cock, and a dick is still a hole when a pee comes out. And
wow.
It's not a penis. Neither one of us can say you have a vajayjay. I mean, I don't know. It's like, why is anybody asking Macy Gray about this anyway? Some of this shit is a trap. If you are born a woman, and as a woman, and ain't I a woman? Born a woman. Yeah, listen. I want people to understand I was born a woman, right? So but I do understand what TS is saying, because, and I've had TS on my podcast before, and we've talked about trans issues. And I think the most important thing when there's conversations like this and people start raising flags that something is homophobic or transphobic is because associated with misinformation or negative comments about people who are transitioning or part of the LGBTQ plus community comes violence, right? So if there's any negative conversation, there is an alert, because it's like, oh, now we're gonna have to deal with a whole bunch of hate stuff. But I do agree that a woman is a woman. And if you have transitioned into a woman, understand that there are things that are still gonna separate you from women who are natural born. Like, look at the issues we have now, even with abortion. men who have transitioned into women do not have that understanding of what it feels like to have your rights taken away as a natural born woman with the uterus that can all this other stuff. So we have to have some level of common sense without saying, listen, there's nothing wrong with natural born women saying, I want people to know I'm a natural born woman. I'd like people to know that you are a trans woman who has transitioned into being a woman, because at the end of the day, a lot of our things may be the same as we identify as women, but when we separate as who was born a female, there's other issues that I'm going to have to deal with, and there's issues that you're going to have to deal with that are different from me as a trans woman. That way, everybody gets their recognition, everybody gets their credit for the plight that they have to go through, and everybody gets to benefit from the things that they need to benefit from.
Do you think that T.S. Madison is a woman?
Yes, I've met T.S. Madison and talked to T.S. But I also know that T.S. doesn't get into that, like, in terms of identifying as a woman with all them titties and hips and, you know. Yes.
So,
yeah.
So T.S. Madison is a home. A female is a house. You just said it.
Yeah, I serenaded you, nigga, with your house is the home. And now
you said you ain't get it. I'm letting you know what I meant by it, since you ain't get it. So if you think T.S. Madison, T.S. Madison is a woman, she is a home. She's not a house. She's a home.
I get it.
All right then. Don't question my brilliance. Don't question my brilliance.
You see what happens with nigga? He's starting to get bold now because these little Samuelites is in the comments.
Okay, don't question my brilliance.
Yeah. Listen, I'm saying I'm holding for everything. Okay.
Once I saw y'all kind of have light colors, I thought, we'll just, go. But I know how y'all do. But I appreciate it so much. But Yamaneika, I do want to ask you a question, because I think you do bring a lot of value. I think both of you, especially that, you're so connected. Both of you are connected to people that are part of the community. There's so much value that can be brought into this conversation. So I do want to ask, because I do know for me, or just people that are around it, a lot of people feel like sometimes that, this conversation can be blown out of proportion, where people are just getting labeled as transphobic, and, they may not have the full understanding of what's happening, because the only thing they can see is on social media or, what we see going viral. So I want to ask you, do you think the hate towards the trans community is blown out of proportion, because of, the things that we're seeing on social media and cancel culture and all these things? Do you think it's blown out of proportion? Yamaneika?
I don't think it's blown out of proportion. I think here's what happens. Especially, I'm not even going to say especially in the Black community, because I know that there's issues in all communities when it comes to sexuality. But I think one of the things I see is, like, people have their stance, right? There's going to be, especially, I think a lot of men may feel uncomfortable about this conversation. They may be even going like, why are we talking about this? I'm tired of all this gay shit. And there's absolutely, when we see so much progression that is happening with the LGBT community plus community, and how much it is represented now in, the African American culture, there's a lot of men who think that there's an agenda to emasculate men. And I can understand that. But as someone who has friends who are a part of the LGBT plus community, and that is a part of my life, some of these guys who are making these complaints don't have friends who are trans or have friends that are part of the LGBT. I see what they're going through in the LGBT plus community. You understand? There was a point in time where there were Black trans women who were being murdered to the point where they thought maybe it was a serial killer. This was happening every week. It was happening every other week. That was one of the things I talked about with T.S. Madison when she came on my podcast. And we talked about, like, how much we're not illuminating that, or how much that gets swept under the rug. And one of the things I had made a comment about, as I said, what I noticed with Black trans women is, once you start to transition into being a woman, and now you take on the moniker of Black women, you take on the moniker of all kinds of disrespect and the femicide rates that go on with Black women. Let's always remember that every 5 to 5.5 hours, a Black woman is being murdered by her domestic partner or somebody that she knows in this country. Is completely outrageous. Now you add on top of that homophobia with somebody now transitioning to be a Black woman, the amount of disrespect, murder, and undermine that they receive is completely crazy. And until you can put yourself in that person's shoes and understand what they experience, a lot of people are not doing that. A lot of people just going, I'm so tired tired of hearing about this. This is not my problem, but those people are also suffering on that end. So we have to take a little bit of time and consideration to have compassion for people who are in this kind of plight.
Pierre, I'll bring that same question to you. What are your thoughts? Do you think, like I said, as I mentioned, a lot of people just kind of feel like, as Yamanika mentioned, why are we having this conversation? Why am I seeing it so much? Do you think, that this is being blown out of proportion, that the hate towards the trans community is blown out of proportion? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Let me summarize the 2-hour dissertation my sweet Yamanika just gave. At the end of the day, any marginalized group is going to feel like they will need to be heard, and then they're not being respected. I don't care if it's a Black group. I don't care if it's homosexuals, if it's transgender. Anytime a group is that feel like they're marginalized or having a voice, they think they need to be heard. And they should be heard. So I don't think there's a problem with it. I don't think it's overblown. If you're in that group, you are feeling their pain. You think about time somebody's talking to us. No different than us as Black people. When we feel like we're tired of being shot by the police, whatever it is, we need to be heard too. So any group. So some white person can be like, man, you Black people always complaining about being shot by the police, blah, blah, blah. There ain't that many of y'all getting shot all day, every day. Well, that's you. If you're on the outside looking in, you're not part of the marginalized group. So when it's someone like transgenders, yeah, they're tired of it too. They're tired of like, yeah, I need to be heard. My situation, like Yamanika said, if you don't have any friends, you don't hear the stories. Her and I have transgender friends, I have gay friends, I have regular friends. So I hear the problems inside. I've had young Black males, I hear about how they feel on the street. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's not blown out of proportion. It should be blown out more. You know what I'm saying? And I really don't like when a marginalized group hates on another marginalized group. Us as Black people who have been demonized and done a lot of wrong to turn around and hate another group. You know how it felt when you got hated on. You didn't like it. So why would you put that same thing? Because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, I appreciate both of that. As I mentioned, both of you add so much value. Now, Macy Gray would respond since the backlash via the Rolling Stone, and here's what she had to say. She says, I have nothing but love for the LGBTQ plus and transgender community and have been a supporter since day one. She added, my statement on Piers Morgan was grossly misunderstood. I don't hate anyone. I respect everyone's right to feel comfortable in their bodies and live in their truth. So I do think, I think both of you added a lot of value and a lot of insight to this. I think Macy Gray, was just trying to voice her opinion, but also show that she does have respect for the LGBTQ plus community. But, I think it's good to always have these type of conversations.
It wasn't. No, people wanted to turn and vilify something she said. That's all they did was try to vilify. She said what she said. It came out correctly. She didn't, it wasn't blown out of proportion. It was some people who just wanted to be negative with what she said. That's all it was. She made a statement. I didn't think any hatred from it. But when you're pushing on someone else, you say something you don't like, they just made it into a bigger situation. So I wouldn't apologize. Shit, damn, I said what I said.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Pierre, listen, and I don't have to do a dumbed down version of what you said. Because you
can't.
But
my girl, that's my girl. Go on, bring it to me, girl. Bring it to me. I love it.
No, but it is true. No, let's also remember when we go on these things, somebody asked her about our album. A lot of times this stuff is fueled to have these commentaries about things that are just going to throw people off track. Macy Gray is a great performer. She's talented. It should have been about her music. And we want to keep getting people's personal opinions. And this is how we run into this whole thing with like Chappelle's opinion or Kevin Hart making an opinion about the gays. Stop asking these people what their opinions are, other than you know what I mean? Because you're not.
Hold on, we got a show. We got a show now. Don't do that.
No, I understand. You're right. But what I'm saying is, when we get to this point where we start wanting to cancel everybody for everything they say, and people got to tiptoe, let people have opinions. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you something. The real face of somebody who is homophobic or transphobic is not Macy Gray.
Right.
It's the person that's out here going to murder somebody because of that. Is the people that's making legislation to stop you from being who you are. Like those people you need to. We need to stop lumping in people that maybe said something you didn't like or not completely on board with the way you want things, and you want people to handle with kid gloves, and start throwing these people over to the side with these people who are really villains to you, because at some point you're not going to know who the real villain is if you start making everybody the villain against you.
That's true. That's very true. Well said, sister. Well
Thank you.
Again, I appreciate you both for calling and chiming in on this one. Now, before we head out, of course, I'd like to know what you have coming up. So, Yamanika, I'll start with you. What do you have coming up, and how can people follow you?
Well, I'm at Yamanika on everything. I am running my hour this week at the world famous Comedy Cellar. I'm sorry, next week, which is the 11th. So before I come to see you guys again, I will be there 7 p.m. It will be at the Fat Black Pussycat Lounge at the Comedy Cellar, an hour of my new material. Also, you can catch me the 20th through the 31st. I will be at the Just for Laughs Festival. So if you're in Montreal and you want to come see me, I'll be doing the Nasty Show and a few other galas there. Everything at Yamanika. Come and talk to me.
Pierre, last and certainly not least, what do you have coming up, and how can people follow you?
Well, you can follow me at Comic Pierre, ComicPierre, because I know what kind of audience we have. I got to spell the shit out for some of y'all. No, not nursery. I don't know how you're going to spell it, but it's all good. Comic Pierre on social media. You can catch me July 14th, that's Thursday, at the City Winery in Washington, D.C., or at the Atlanta Uptown Comedy Club in Hapeville, which is right outside Atlanta, July 22nd and 23rd. I'll be there. And like I said, check out that new special coming out soon. It's gonna come out. It's coming in hot, y'all. It's coming in hot. It's coming in hot. All I'm saying, my new special with Comedy Hype is coming in hot.
Well, I appreciate you both for calling and chiming in on this topic. You heard from us. Now we want to hear from you in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Flame Monroe's response to Macy Gray? For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.
Put it in them comments. I've been reading them lately.
Do you know the comedy culture? Play Comedy Hype, the game. Out now.